I stopped my own wedding before it started because of something I found out about my father-in-law while I was standing in my wedding dress with 120 guests already seated. Hi, welcome back to Reddit Guilty Feed. Today's story is from r/am I the asshole. It has over 108,000 upvotes, and it is the most tense story I have ever covered on this channel. Because unlike most stories we read here, this one was not about what had already happened. It was about a decision being made in real time, in a wedding dress, with a room full of people waiting. Let's get into it. I am going to call her Sophie. Sophie is 31 years old. She works as an accountant. She is, by her own description, the kind of person who reads every contract, checks every number, never signs anything without understanding it fully. She met Daniel 3 years ago at a work event. He is 33, works in property management. She describes their relationship as straightforward, not complicated, not dramatic. Just two people who decided they wanted the same things and built a life around that. Daniel's father, I am going to call him Robert, is 64. He is a charming man, the kind of man who remembers everyone's name, who tells a story that makes the whole room laugh, who always picks up the bill before anyone else can reach for it. Sophie liked Robert. She had always liked Robert. Past tense. The wedding was planned for a Saturday in June. 120 guests. A country house venue they had booked 18 months in advance. Sophie had planned everything herself. The flowers, the seating, the menu, the music. Every detail accounted for. 3 weeks before the wedding, Sophie was doing paperwork. Standard pre-wedding administration. Updating insurance documents, sorting finances. The kind of thing only an accountant does 3 weeks before their own wedding. And she came across something. A name. In a document connected to a joint financial account she and Daniel were setting up. A name that was not Robert's name, but was clearly the same person. She says she stared at it for a long time, telling herself she had made a mistake, that it was a data error, that there was a simple explanation. There was not. Sophie is an accountant. She knows how to dig. And over the next 4 days, she dug. What she found was this. Robert's real name is not Robert. He changed his name legally 22 years ago, shortly after being released from prison. He had served 4 years for fraud, large-scale financial fraud, against multiple victims, including elderly people who lost their life savings. He had built an entirely new identity, new name, new history, new life, and had apparently told nobody, not his wife Margaret, not his son Daniel, nobody. Sophie sat with this information for 3 days, trying to decide what to do. And then Robert found out she knew. Sophie does not know how Robert found out she had been looking. She thinks it may have been a search she ran on a shared computer, or a document left open. She is not sure. What she knows is that 4 days before the wedding, Robert arrived at their house, while Daniel was at work. He knocked on the door. She opened it, and he walked past her into the kitchen, without being invited, sat down, and looked at her. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten her directly. He was, she says, completely calm, which was somehow worse. He said, "I know what you found, and I know you have not told Daniel yet, because if you had, I would have heard about it." He said, "I built this family. I built Daniel's life. Everything he has, his confidence, his career, his sense of who he is, came from me." And then he said, "If you tell him, you will destroy him. Not me. Him. And he will never forgive you for it. Because you will be the person who took his father away from him." On the week of his wedding, he stood up, straightened his jacket, and said, "I will see you on Saturday," and walked out. Sophie says she sat in her kitchen for 2 hours after he left, not moving, just sitting, because she realized something. He was right about one thing. Telling Daniel would destroy something. The question was it better for him to live in a lie or to know the truth? She had 4 days to decide. Sophie told one person, her best friend and maid of honor, Liz. She told Liz everything. The document, the conviction, the name change, the visit, everything. Liz said, "You have to tell him. Not because Robert deserves to be exposed, but because Daniel deserves to know who his father actually is. Before he commits to a future built on top of that secret." Sophie knew Liz was right. She also knew Robert was right. And those two things being simultaneously true was the most uncomfortable place she had ever been in her life. She spent 4 days going back and forth. She wrote it out on paper. Tell him versus do not tell him. The arguments on each side were almost equal. And then Saturday arrived. The morning of the wedding was, by every external measure, perfect. Sun was out. Venue looked beautiful. Hair and makeup done. Flowers exactly as ordered. Sophie stood in front of the mirror in her wedding dress and looked at herself and made a decision. She was going to say nothing. She was going to walk down that aisle, marry Daniel, and deal with it later, when the wedding was over, when the timing was better, when she had figured out the right way to do it. That was the decision. She walked to the top of the stairs, ready to go down, ready to start, and she looked through the window at the bottom of the staircase, into the ceremony room, and saw Robert, standing at the front, next to Daniel, smiling, shaking hands with the guests in the front row, being Robert, charming, warm, beloved. And something inside Sophie shifted. She turned to Liz and said, "I cannot do this." Liz said, "Which part?" Sophie said, "The part where I walk down that aisle knowing what I know, and let him stand there believing his father is who he thinks he is, on the most important day of his life, while his father stands right next to him, smiling." Liz said, "What are you going to do?" Sophie said, "I am going to tell him now." Liz said, "Sophie, the guests are seated." Sophie said, "I know." She walked down the stairs, through the side door of the venue, along the corridor that ran alongside the ceremony room, and through the door at the front. 120 guests turned to look at her. They assumed the wedding was starting. It was not. She walked directly to Daniel, took his hands, and said, "I need to tell you something. Before we do this, I need you to know something." Daniel looked at her and said, "Okay. Just okay. Not, what is wrong? Not, can this wait? Just, okay." And Sophie, in front of 120 people, told him everything. The name, the conviction, the fraud, the victims, the visit to her kitchen, the threat. All of it. The room was completely silent. She says it took about 4 minutes. 4 minutes that felt like 4 hours. When she finished, Daniel did not look at his father. He did not look at the guests. He did not look anywhere except at Sophie. And he said, "Thank you for telling me." Then he turned to Robert and said, "I need you to leave." Robert said, "Daniel, let me explain." Daniel said, "I need you to leave. Right now, please." Robert left. Daniel's mother, Margaret, who had known none of this, began to cry, and then quietly fainted, and had to be helped to a chair. The ceremony was paused for 2 hours. Some guests left, Most stayed. Margaret was helped to a private room, given water, given time. Sophie's parents stayed close. Daniel's closest friends stayed close. And Daniel and Sophie sat in a small room off the main corridor, just the two of them, for 40 minutes. Sophie says she expected him to be angry, not at Robert, at her, for doing it that way, in front of everyone. He was not. He told her, "I need you to know something. I have always known something was wrong. I never dug into it, because I did not want to find what you found. But I always knew." And then he said, "You gave me the chance to choose with the truth, not without it. That is the only way I wanted to get married." They got married. 2 hours later, with 60 of the original 120 guests still in attendance, without Robert, without the best man speech Robert had planned, without the father of the groom toast. Sophie posted on Reddit the next day, on her honeymoon. She wrote, "I know what I did was not the right way to do it. I know a room full of guests was not the right place. I know I should have told him days earlier, but I could not walk down that aisle knowing what I knew, and watch his father stand there smiling. Am I the asshole?" 108,000 upvotes, over 13,000 comments, and unlike most of our stories, this comment section is not divided. It is almost unanimous, but one comment changed everything. Top comment, 42,000 upvotes, from you/always-tell-the-truth_01. NTA, not even in the same universe. You gave Daniel something his father had denied him his entire life. The truth about who he actually comes from. Yes, the timing was imperfect. Yes, a room full of guests was not ideal. But Robert created that situation. Robert chose to build his life on a lie. Robert chose to come to your home and threaten you. Every consequence of that wedding belongs to Robert, not you. And the fact that Daniel thanked you tells you everything. 42,000 upvotes. And the last line is the one I keep coming back to. The fact that Daniel thanked her. In that room. In front of everyone. Tells you everything about who Daniel is. Second comment, from you/sameboat_different_name, 28,000 upvotes. I want to talk about what Robert said in that kitchen. He said, "If you tell him, you will be the person who took his father away from him." That sentence is one of the most sophisticated manipulation tactics I have ever heard. He was reframing his own exposure as Sophie's crime. He was making his consequences her fault, before she had even done anything. That level of preemptive manipulation suggests someone who has done this before. Someone who is very good at making their victims feel responsible. NTA. And please be careful. Men like Robert do not stop. That comment gave me chills. Because it is right. Robert walked into her kitchen, sat down calmly, and performed a masterclass in making a victim feel like the villain, before she had said a single word. And now, the comment. From you/I knew a Malcolm Harris, posted 48 hours after the original story. This account posted just one comment, and then went silent. The comment said, "I think I know who Robert is. I cannot say his real name publicly. But if this is who I think it is, the fraud conviction Sophie found is not the whole story. There were more victims, and there were more convictions that were sealed because some of the victims were minors." The comment has 19,000 upvotes, and Sophie replied to it. 2 words. "I know. All right. Here is my verdict. NTA. Unanimously. And without any hesitation." This is actually the clearest verdict I have ever had to give on this channel. Because there is no other side. Robert committed fraud against multiple victims, including, apparently, children. He hid it for 22 years. He changed his name. He built a family on top of a lie. And when that lie was threatened, he went to his son's future wife and tried to make her complicit in it. Sophie did not create this situation. She inherited it. On the morning of her wedding, in her wedding dress, with no good options. Could she have told Daniel earlier? Yes. That is the only thing I would change. But here is what stops me from being even slightly critical. Daniel's response. He did not fall apart. He did not turn on Sophie. He did not protect his father. He looked at the woman he was about to marry and said, "You gave me the chance to choose with the truth, not without it. That is the only way I wanted to get married." I have read thousands of Reddit posts, and that is one of the most extraordinary things I have ever seen a person say, because it means Daniel understood instantly what Sophie had risked, what she had chosen, and why. Sophie did not stop her wedding. She saved it. NTA. Drop your verdict in the comments and tell me, could you have walked down that aisle knowing what Sophie knew? Or would you have done exactly what she did? I read every single comment. Before I go, Sophie posted an update about 3 weeks after the wedding, about what happened with Robert, what happened with Margaret, and what Daniel decided to do. I am covering that update very soon. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because you are going to want to be there for it. If you are new to Reddit Guilty Feed, welcome. We post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Real stories, real verdicts, real reactions. 4 more videos right here, each one completely different. But every single one will make you feel something. Drop your verdict below, and I will see you in the next one.